Augustine, one of the great church fathers, once said, "Thou hast formed us for thyself, and our hearts resteth till they find rest in thee." That right there sums up the existence of the entire human race. The ancient questions of what and why are brilliantly answered in the shorter Westminster Catechism. Question: what is the chief end of man? Answer: man's chief end is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. This is seen in Revelation 4:11. You are worthy, O Lord our God, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and they exist because you created what you pleased. Unfortunately, we have turned away from God. All the way from the fall to now, man has refused to obey or love God, and have fled from His presence. Yet how can you escape an omnipresent God? That God is everywhere is one thing, His presence is another thing, and it is that presence that we flee from. God's whole work of redemption thus serves the purpose of bringing us back into His presence. That's why God calls us unceasingly, and why Jesus paid our debt. Let us now consider the Old Testament model of the tabernacle. The outer court is where the returning sinner first offered a blood sacrifice for his sins, and then washed himself in the basin that was nearby. Then he could go through the veil that separated the outer court from the inner courts, and kept out natural light. Inside there was a golden candlestick with a lit candle on it, and some bread, both of which are symbols of Jesus. There was also some burning incense that never stopped burning, which is a symbol of unceasing prayer. However, this wasn't where God dwelt. His presence dwelt in the Holy of Holies, where only the high priest could enter once a year, after offering a blood sacrifice for his sins and for the sins of all the people of Israel. Another veil separated this Holy of Holies from the inner court, and this very same veil was the one that was torn from top to bottom when Jesus died. The message was clear. God's presence is now open to everyone. The overwhelming majority of Christianity today teaches that we are constantly in the presence of God by default. Well, no, we're not. We still have to enter into His presence and experience Him. If we don't, we won't experience the great fire that great saints of past ages had. Christians may not be perishing from lack of knowledge like the world is, but they are starving from lack of presence of God. It's easy to love God intellectually. I did. But the highest love of God is spiritual. God is spirit, so we can only truly know Him with our spirits. Frederick Faber is one such person who deeply and hotly loved God with all his spirit. He had a special and unique love for each person in the Trinity that can be seen in the passionate hymns he wrote. This kind of love for God cannot be intellectually known, but must be experienced. In fact, this is the difference between prophets and scribes. Scribes merely repeat what they have read, whereas prophets tell what they have seen in the presence of God. Any believing Christian today can be a prophet, yet most aren't. Why? A common and plausible answer is that we are cold. We don't have the fire of God in us. Yet that's not quite it. Jesus' death may have torn the veil that separated God's presence from God's children, but there is another veil that remains in place, the veil on the heart. This veil is the self-life and the self-sins. Self-righteousness, self-pity, self-confidence, self-sufficiency, self-admiration, self-love, and a whole bunch of others like these. Thing is, we don't do these. We are these. Herein lies their subtlety and power. Because this veil on our heart is part of us, removing it is not easy, and it is in fact very painful. We can't just instruct it away, we have to crucify it. We have to take these self-sins that are part of us and nail them to the cross. Furthermore, we can't do it ourselves. We have to ask God to do it for us. And be wary of mistaking lazy acceptance for the real work of God. As an example, in the Chronicles of Narnia, The Dawn Treader, there is a scene where a boy named Eustace is turned into a dragon by his own greed. Later in the book, he tries to get his dragon skin off. With some pain, it's not very effective though, so Aslan pierces to the core and brutally rips his dragon skin off. The process is very painful to Eustace, but it's over quickly. Finally, though the work of the cross is rough, painful, and deadly, a suffering victim does die eventually. And then, the resurrection. Joy replaces pain, as we enter into the glorious presence of the living God. In His kindness, God has called you to share in His eternal glory by means of Christ Jesus. So after you have suffered a little while, He will restore, support, and strengthen you, and He will place you on a firm foundation.